Hi, Arcfieldweather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, July the 18th. A strong cold frontal system is working its way through the mid-Atlantic region. It caused numerous showers and thunderstorms really over the last 48 hours or so out ahead of that cold frontal systems. As early this morning, there's some showers and thunderstorms lingering along the southern mid-Atlantic coastline. That front slowly edges to the south and east over the next few hours. A cooler air mass certainly coming into play for the mid-Atlantic region, not only for today and tomorrow, but really it looks like generally high temperatures in the 80s over the next several days in much of the mid-Atlantic region. And of course, that is noticeably cooler than what we've experienced during the past several days. We'll take a look here at the tropical scene as we begin this video discussion. Quiet, all quiet, as we now pass the midpoint of the month of July. This is quite unusual. No activity at all in the Atlantic basin, and none is expected over the next couple of days. There is a warning sign, however, in my opinion, that kind of alerts me to be on the outlook, let's say, as we turn from July into August, and we'll go over that in the next several minutes here. Not only is the Atlantic basin quiet, let's just shift here to the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean. Only a system that is not even strong enough to be named right now. One system out there in the eastern Pacific, and then if we go farther west out to the central Pacific, same thing. Not even strong enough to be named. One system. So really much of the Atlantic basin and Pacific basin right now are rather quiet. Again, somewhat unusual for the second half of the month of July. Well, in terms of the chance of severe weather across the nation, that too is looking rather quiet, which is great news here. We've had a lot of severe weather over the past several days, and even numerous power outages across portions of the Mid-Atlantic Northeast U.S., for example. This is the probability outlook as put out by NOAA's Storm Prediction Center for later today and tonight. Really, no enhanced areas and only a marginal threat here out across the central and northern plains later today and tonight. So again, all quiet on the tropical scene and relatively quiet nationwide with respect to the possibility of severe weather. Well, let's now walk through some of the forecast maps using last night's zero-Z run of the GFS, a conventional version of the GFS. This is the total forecast map, the total accumulated precipitation over the next 10 days by last night's run of the GFS. A couple things I want to point out here. First of all, still relatively dry across much of the western part of the nation, right in this region right here, but a lot of moisture flowing out of the moist Gulf of Mexico region. It looks like it'll result in a lot of rainfall from the south central U.S. across the Tennessee Valley into the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. Not necessarily up in this part of the nation over the next few days, but later next week it gets quite unsettled again. So a decent amount of rainfall over the next 10 days for that part of the nation, really much of the eastern half of the nation. The other thing I want to point out is we're getting to that time of the year where we have kind of a monsoon setting up in the southwestern part of the U.S. Now, the monsoon generally is thought of as a heavy rain event, but it's really, technically speaking, it refers to a seasonal wind, and those winds tend to bring in moisture. Places like India, Bangladesh, for example, they tend to bring in very moist air, which does, in fact, result in a lot of moisture. Well, the southwestern U.S. actually has kind of a monsoon season as well. Generally speaking, the second half of the summer, let's say late July, August, maybe even into September, we get some moisture that can feed in from the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean into the southwestern states, and we see a precipitation pattern like this kind of flowing up along the western edge of Mexico and then into the southwest U.S. That's kind of indicative of what you would see with the monsoonal winds setting up. So we're starting to see a decent amount of moisture. This is again over the next 10 days, places like Arizona, New Mexico, and even into Colorado and Utah. So more than likely, we're now getting into that more moist season for much of the southwestern U.S., where it increases a chance, let's say, for afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Again, the monsoonal season is coming to the southwestern states. Well, let's walk through the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern here over the next several days as dictated by the 0Z run of the GFS. Again, late in the game here, this is kind of speculation phase. I want to point out what to me is a red flag for potential Atlantic Basin tropical activity as we get into the early part of August. Here we start off today here on Thursday, an upper level low situated, kind of a stretched out low over the southeastern part of Canada, the eastern Great Lakes, and all associated with that surface cold frontal system that, again, right now has reached the Mid-Atlantic, the southern Mid-Atlantic coastline, edges a little bit farther to the south and east over the next few hours here. But here we go over the next several days and watch what happens here in the middle part of the nation. We have this upper level low, and when you have a pattern like that, it certainly suggests there will be no extreme heat in the central plains and really all the way into the eastern part of the nation, not only over the next few days, and this is already going all the way out to next Sunday, but it looks like much of next week. We had extreme heat, places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City yesterday, and especially the day before and even the day before that. It looks like the next several days, high temperatures generally in the 80s, even in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. And that more normal temperature pattern looks like it could extend all the way to the end of the month of July. And this is one of the reasons right here, an upper level low developing, intensifying over the middle part of the nation. And notice no upper level ridge over the eastern part of the nation as well. Your hot weather is confined to the interior northwest. Now we move forward here, and I'll go quickly here, and I want to point out this, what I believe is a red flag for potential tropical activity by the time we get to the early part of August. Notice here, and again, we're going way out there. This is now at the end of the month of July, and watch this upper level ridge start to build across southeastern part of Canada. Once this upper level low finally scoots on out here, we're all the way out to July 29th on this particular map, but we'll go even farther in time. And those of you who have watched my videos over the past several years know one of the signs I like to look for right here. When I see a strong upper level ridge over southeastern part of Canada, that to me is a red flag for potential tropical activity to move this way. Let's say in southwestern Atlantic into the Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico, and that of course raises the threat, the potential threat across the southeastern states as well, the Gulf states. But when I see this kind of a ridge, and again, this is way out there, 2 weeks from right now, so it's a speculation phase, but this is something we'll closely monitor over the next week or two. Again, looks quiet right now in the Atlantic Basin, but when I see something like this, it gets me a little bit concerned. We're all the way out to the early part of August here, the beginning of August, but this is something we'll watch for. When you see strong high pressure ridging over the southeastern part of Canada, kind of opens the door for those westward moving tropical systems into the southeastern U.S., Gulf of Mexico, maybe a little farther south into the Caribbean Sea. So something we'll be on the lookout for over the next, let's say, week to 10 days or so. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps. Again, right now we have this frontal system right along the mid-Atlantic coastline, maybe over the Delmarva Peninsula, the southern half, and there certainly can be some shower and thunderstorm activity in the southern mid-Atlantic region, maybe even an isolated shower, a thunderstorm today, D.C., Philadelphia. This is only moving a little bit farther to the south and east, and then it kind of settles in there and stalls out. Meanwhile, northern plains, nice Canadian high pressure system that has dropped into the northern plains, and this is a much more comfortable air mass that has moved into the Great Lakes region, now moving into the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S. Certainly not nearly as warm as the last few days in the northeastern part of the nation, including the big cities along the I-95 corridor region. It should get a little bit less humid as well. Now let's go out a little bit farther in time, and again you'll see a lot of green here extending from, let's say, the south central states all the way into the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., and later next week. This is all the way out to next Tuesday. And again, this is kind of the area where we saw a lot of rainfall here over the next 10 days, and you get a lot of this moisture here flowing out of the Gulf of Mexico into the south central states, Tennessee Valley, mid-Atlantic region. This is not necessarily over the next few days, but later next week into the following weekend. Let's go out a little bit farther in time here. This is next Tuesday. Again, an enhancement of showers and thunderstorms later next week in this corridor here from the south central states to the northeastern part of the nation. A lot of dry conditions. This is a week from right now out across the western states. But here is that potential, what I would say is kind of a monsoonal look to the pattern here, where you get some moist air flowing out of the eastern Pacific Ocean. And even some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico can play a role here, where it starts to flood the southwestern states with some increase in moisture. That enhances the chance for showers and thunderstorms, especially during the second half of the summer season. Now let's go a little bit farther in time here, and we'll just push forward here. And here we go into the end of next week, and finally the last weekend in the month of July. And again, some rainfall showing up in that corridor region here, where again it looks like a decent amount of rainfall here over the next 10 days or so. High pressure this particular time sitting over the Great Lakes, and again much of the eastern half of the nation, where it's been quite hot recently. Looks like there won't be extreme heat, not only over the next few days, but really looks that way right to the end of the month of July. So that high pressure ridging that could build in the southeastern part of Canada 10 days or 2 weeks from now is something we'll be monitoring over the next week to 10 days or so, because that generally leads to enhanced chance of tropical activity into the Gulf of Mexico region, the Gulf of Mexico states, or maybe a little farther south into the Caribbean Sea, but quiet for the next few days. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.